You found the Love Fly podcast. I'm Paul Tizard, fear-of-flying coach. I've been helping nervous flyers since 1997. And in this podcast, you will find aviation experts, enthusiasts, and also people just like you that have beaten their fears. A massive welcome to you, and thank you so much for listening. Welcome, Stacie Verness. We are talking about safety. We're talking about flying, and Stacie was on the Love Fly Facebook group and spotted you, and you put a couple of helpful posts on to saying about, because you teach pilots, you test pilots in some way, but I got the impression that you're doing like the little aircraft. So I thought you sound like you'd be a great guest. So welcome, Stacie.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and how you came to find Love Fly.
Well, I'm a certificated flight instructor, which means that I have the capabilities and the certificate to teach people how to fly.
Okay.
I have small aircraft, your Pipers, your Cessnas, your single engine land aircraft. My full-time job, though, takes up most of my time as I'm a sixth grade science teacher. And
okay.
I did take up flying later in life. I was 35 when I got my license. So I always thought it'd be neat to just progress as much as I could. I was already set in my regular career with a pension in place, so I didn't change careers. But I decided just to keep going with the licenses and the ratings, and I stopped when I got my flight instructor certificate. And my goal with it is to take kids up and to teach the kids and to give them just insight. And as well as every 2 years, we test, not really, I don't want to call it a test. It's just a review where we check to see if pilots are still safe in the air. And if they need extra help, it's not a pass fail. It's just we go up and fly some more. And it's just it's more of a charity and more giving. I don't really make a lot of money at it like some flight instructors that do it full time. It's kind of like, it's mostly in for it for like the kids, because we do take kids every month on free airplane rides. And if they fly with someone who's a certificated flight instructor, they get a signature in their logbook that will actually go toward flying.
Oh, that's very cool. So how did you get started? What made you even think about becoming a pilot yourself?
When I was a kid, I was really interested. And then, as time goes on, growing up in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, my interest just kind of changed, boys, I mean? So, but we really started it off again. I was 34 and I had my 9-year-old son, and they have a program. The Experimental Aircraft Association has a program, which they call Young Eagles. And that's where they take kids up for a free airplane ride to introduce them to aviation and see if we captivate them. Well, my son went up and he was kind of like, whatever. And I said, hey, do you guys take parents? And this one guy said, hey, we started talking, and they said, hey, take this mom up. I went up there and they let me fly the plane. She let me hold the controls, and I said, oh my God, this is it. I was obsessed.
So you hooked straight away.
Yeah, they call it the flying bug, and I got it. It was bad because that was a Saturday. 2 days later, I'm on the phone looking for how am I going to do this? Who do I call? Which flight schools? Yeah. And I finally found a place, and it was a great fit, and started flight training. I was hooked up by a friend at the time, and she said, hey, I'm going to introduce you to this guy at this flight school who's a really good instructor. Well, lo and behold, we started flying. We did a lot, and that was in 2002 we started, and more developed of it. He's now my other half.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, flight instructor student classic love scenario. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It is awesome. So
tell us a little bit about, where are you operating from at the moment?
The airport I'm operating out of?
Yeah.
It's a small airport in the San Fernando Valley, which is Los Angeles area. It is called Whiteman Airport. It's named after a guy named Marvin Whiteman. And it's a small community airport. It is just to me, it's my happy place.
Yeah.
It's, a small airport. It's like a community. Everybody knows everybody. We do things. It was a perfect place to land and take off out of and because you didn't have to deal with so much of the craziness at Van Nuys and Burbank. You go up there, you fly, the airspaces, you learn the complex airspace, but you don't have 8 million jets flying around you and you're trying to learn. Yeah, it was great.
I love the story. Okay, so you've gone along, you've ended up meeting your partner there as well, and now you're flying, you're teaching. So, what sort of things are you doing? Because you came onto the Love Fly group. I was curious how that happened.
I went on because, I was thinking about how there are a lot of people, including my son, who, it's weird. He went on that first flight. He's kind of afraid of flying. And a lot of people are afraid of flying. I tell my sixth graders, hey, we got this Young Eagles program. That's the kids' flights. And some of them say, oh, no way, I'm afraid. And so I was reading about phobias. I got my own fears, So, I'm thinking about a fear of flying. That can be crippling because people won't be able to go anywhere, do anything if they want to see Hawaii or if they want to go to Europe or anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Their fear is going to keep them from fulfilling the dreams of going elsewhere.
Mm.
I know people like that. They won't go anywhere unless they can drive.
And so you're seeing it for youngsters, and where are they getting it from?
Perhaps parents, or maybe, media, in my generation, and I'm sure, as you remember, 9/11 was a big thing, and
Mm.
it's still, and when there's a horrific accident on an airplane, the media, takes it and it's just all over.
Yes.
And so it does generate fear.
Yeah. So that's yeah. So you're seeing. So what sort of things do you find helps to reassure people about the fear of flying?
I've taken some kids up that were very afraid, and sometimes here's one thing that really frightens people: turbulence. Turbulence, when you get there, it's moving around, the airplane moves, shakes, shifts directions. And when people are up there, they get really afraid. They think that the airplane's going to break apart, fall out of the sky. So I tell them, I say, when you get into your car and you ever been, on a rough road or even four-wheeling, it's moving a lot. The thing is with turbulence, and I think that's what scares people, is you can see the road ahead of you,
Yeah.
but you can't see turbulence. So the airplane's bouncing all around and you can't see why. That's, when you don't have clouds around, when you go into clouds, you're going to get some bumps. But when you're flying in clear air, you're wondering, like, why is this airplane moving where I can't see it?
Mm.
And not being able to see something generates fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So how do you get them past that?
Um, I talk to them, and I say, hey, this is, if it were unsafe, we wouldn't go up. Because, before we even get off of the ground, we check the weather, and there are weather conditions that will prevent us. We have here in the Los Angeles and Southern California area called this wind called the Santa Ana winds, and they're intense winds. And you don't go up and fly in those winds. If you know the weather is going to be inclement, you don't go up. You just simply don't go up in a small airplane. And even, large airplanes, there are certain conditions that will keep them down. I mean, here in Los Angeles area, we don't have snow, so we don't deal with that. But as far as winds and small aircraft, we'll just stay down because it's not pleasant. I mean, pilots won't go flying into hurricanes or tornadoes, no, because they know it's coming. We check the weather.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So that's quite helpful. So you're talking about. I mean, the thing is, when you're in a little aircraft, they are little, aren't they? So, these small
yes,
ones, they're cute, but you're going to
yeah.
move a heck of a lot more in turbulence than one of those big whoppers, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. It's smaller, it's lighter. You're going to feel it more.
So,
So that's
what about turbulence for you then? Have you ever worried thinking about the integrity of your aircraft or the physics of it? Do you ever think, oh, we're going to do you ever have you ever had that thought like we might flip upside down or something crazy like
you
that?
know, I'll tell you, there's been a couple of times. And I'll tell you one time in particular, as I'd mentioned in it just before, that we have this wind called the Santa Ana winds that comes up. High pressure system forms over the desert. It blows in into where we are in the valley. And it wasn't, I was flying a little part-time job, flying traffic reporters. And one of the other traffic reporters told the reporter in the plane I was flying, he goes, "Oh, the winds are so bad now. They kicked up. They showed up 4 hours early. They even predict when the wind's going to come." Well, didn't quite work that way. So I got back. I was on my way back. I just said, "Let's get back. Let's get back." Soon as I, hit the city next to Burbank, oh my gosh, the airplane was like all over the place. So I just said, "Okay, just do what you were trained to do." I have this reporter behind me. He was nervous. You just pull your power out, get below what they call a maneuvering speed, just to make sure you don't want to cause damage to the airplane. And the airplane was moving me, I wasn't moving it.
Mm.
And I was just like, okay, okay. I was nervous and I just wanted to get the airplane down. So I landed at Burbank Airport, which is, an airport that lands airliners,
Hmm.
and they've kind of pushed out what we call general aviation, not as much there. So I'm in there with the airliners. I just wanted to come in and land. I just want to come straight and get this thing down. And I was floating and floating and floating. I'm like, oh my gosh, took up the whole runway, and I finally just said, "Look, I'm landing," and I just let it go, whack, and I just want to get it down.
Yeah.
And that was one time I was really quiet, really, I had
Yeah.
a bit of fear, but I just said I have to just put my head down and do what I need to do.
Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that. And so you knew your training, and that's what
Yes.
came through in that moment, even though that was beyond what I would say. It sounds like beyond the aircraft limits.
Yes. And those aircraft, those Cessnas and Pipers are built with a lot of stability. So you're not going to flip upside down. I mean, you have to almost try to do it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you
Well,
do,
why would you? Yeah.
yeah, especially in a plane like that. I mean, that's not what it's made for, right? They're training planes. I mean, they're nice planes, they're forgiving aircraft. I
Yeah.
mean, nothing is completely idiot proof, but, they are a very forgiving airplane.
Nice.
It is.
So as you're in general aviation, which is an area we don't have as much to do with in our group, but we have got a couple of people that train pilots, etc. So we got a little bit of that. Geeta, who will be listening to this, she's doing her pilot training at the moment. She's
I saw someone on there. I was talking with
yeah,
somebody.
yeah, she's yeah. So, but tell us a little bit about the general aviation approach to safety. When you compare it to like when you get on a flight on a normal aircraft, what would you say is the same and what's different?
Every aircraft before it's flown is, you give it a pre-flight inspection. You check everything you can on the ground, whether you're flying Boeing or an Airbus airplane to a 172, a Cessna 172. You're going to do a pre-flight. You're going to run up your systems. You're going to check to see anything that could go wrong on the ground to eliminate any risk. So, all airplanes will pretty much fly the same principles of flight. In the bigger aircraft, you got a lot more systems. But in a smaller aircraft, it's still the same thing, whether you're flying, like I said, a huge airplane or a small one, you're checking all your systems to make sure everything's good on the ground. You don't ever want to take off with well, we should be okay. You want to be certain that everything's working before you
Yeah,
take that airplane up in the air. Hmm.
yeah.
So
So that's before every flight then.
every
So
flight, yes.
what happens in terms of the aircraft maintenance? Is it as regulated as commercial aviation?
Yes, we have, well, commercial aviation, they're under a different, category, but as far as small aircraft, we still have to have inspections. You have to have an annual inspection where the airplane is, they inspect the whole thing from, nose to tail. They have other systems checks that we have to adhere to. Just like big aircraft, it just, there's less to it, less parts, but yet the principles are the same. Everything has to be checked. You cannot be out of compliance or you will lose your license. So the FAA is pretty, Federal Aviation Administration is really on top of it. And they're all about safety. It's all about good decision making. I mean, flying is 80%, you know, being a good pilot's 80% good decision making and safety. Stick and rudder is great, but the other stuff is more important,
Yeah.
you know.
So
So
what sort of checks are done on you, for example? I mean, you're testing other people, but how are you tested? That's a
I mean,
question
well,
people will be thinking.
we still have to have a flight review too. Now, with a flight instructor's certificate, every 2 years we have to take what's called a flight instructor refresher course. And that is, you have to go through and do all like the ground stuff. Okay, we do that on our own, because you have to pass tests.
Yeah.
And then you go up and fly with another instructor. And you go up and just do basic maneuvers, kind of like what I do with other people. We just check to see there's a few key maneuvers that I want to see that people are good at. And it's mostly about safety. It is about safety. So
So what
execute.
sort of things when you say, because so I always put the hat of the nervous flyer listening to the podcast, going, oh, okay. So sometimes I might get on a small aircraft, and then I might see one pilot, and then I already know that that's different to commercial aviation, where you tend to have,
Right.
so then they'll be thinking questions about safety that I can't even imagine. So let's take it down to when you say like you testing a few sort of basics safety maneuvers. What sort of things would that be? For the lay person.
Okay. Well, one thing we always practice is, suppose we were to have an engine out.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen very often, but you always want to be ready. So, we want to aviate, communicate, and put the airplane down in a safe place. I wouldn't want to sit here and go through all the steps to someone who's a layperson. So like, what? But we want to restart the airplane, see what we can. If we
yeah,
can restart it, we look for a place to land, and we just want to make sure if we can't restart, then we will just take the next step. Another thing that I always want to check so people are safe, if you are coming into land and all of a sudden, say a truck drives onto the runway, uh-oh, or another airplane still on the runway, you can't land on it. You can't have more than one aircraft on the runway. So you execute what's called a go around. Well, there's one part of a go around that if you do it, it could be potentially dangerous. When you land, in the configuration of landing, you have your flaps. You put your flaps down.
yeah.
Well, the flaps they come out of the back of the airplane, out of the wings of the airplane. So you can get down quicker without increasing your airspeed. So we want to make sure that they execute that properly. You want to be a safe altitude, and you retract your flaps increment by increment. And if any of these people here that are afraid of flying, I recommend, this is the main reason I want to talk to you, is I recommend people with flight fears to go up in a small airplane, take a few flight lessons. They might get addicted to it. And I know a few people that had a horrible fear of flying, and now they're accomplished pilots. A lot of people are afraid because they don't have control, and we don't realize that until we really break it apart. When you're in an airplane, you're not in control. Okay? I'll share with you something. I was born in Southern California, was raised in Southern California, and I've only lived in the state. We're known for our earthquakes. I am absolutely petrified, scared to death of earthquakes. And I've like, probably because I experienced my first one at 3.5 years old, and I remember it. It was a bad one. So I can't control the earthquakes. When that thing starts shaking, I can't say stop. So I'm afraid of it. It's one of the scariest things to me. If someone said, "What are you most afraid of?" I think earthquakes is near the top,
Yeah.
or getting a horrific disease. It's you can't, because there's no control. But if you go on a small airplane ride and you're sitting there next to a pilot in a very forgiving aircraft like a Cessna 172 or a Piper Cherokee, that guy lets you fly the airplane. You fly it, you turn it, you feel it, you move it. It, in a lot of cases, it will ease people's fears. Yeah.
So that for you, then it's the kind of experiencing it and
Yes.
giving you back a bit of control that does the thing for people.
Yes. I think that's a great way to look at it. Because like I said, there's a lot of things we can't see up there. You don't know when the turbulence are coming. So, as we discussed earlier, if you can't see them, you're going to be more afraid. But if you go up there, and You just feel what the airplane does, and you know that they're not going to hurt you. They might be a little annoying and uncomfortable sometimes, but they won't hurt you. Small airplanes and big airplanes, it feels the same way. It moves back and forth, up and down, pitching and rolling and bouncing. So, yeah.
Yeah, you sound very so you're not worried about the strength of the aircraft, even though it's a little baby aircraft. I'm gonna call it that just because I think it's cute.
They
Um,
are.
and you're not worried about the integrity. You're not worried about the physics.
Um, as far as now, again, like if you have some severe, what we have a weather, if there's severe weather, which they call SIGMETs, significant weather, which applies to all aircraft, even airliners. You just don't go up. Certain maneuvers that you learn not to do, you don't want to have a lot of load on it. This is what you learn through your training. If you follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do, and do what you were trained to do, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, that's good. So what about engine failure? Because you're going up in single engine aircraft.
yes.
Does that ever sort of occur to you? Because I'm always I like twins. So I have to say, when I had some pilot lessons, I felt happier in the twin than I did in the single,
Oh,
even
it's
though I
doing
know
yeah.
it's safe. But I just
Yes.
thought, oh, it's nice having that extra. But that
Um,
doesn't worry you?
well, you think about whenever I'm flying, I'm always looking, okay, if my engine quits, I'm going to put this airplane here.
Mm,
I'm going to, they glide. So for every 10 feet that aircraft, the 172, flies forward, it will descend 1 foot if you have it set to your best glide of 65 knots. You actually got to pitch for your airspeed. Now, if you're pitching at 65 knots, that's your best glide. You're going to go farther. Yeah. So that's what, all the stuff we're trained to do. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if you want to keep this off the record, but sometimes it doesn't work out well. I mean, it's just like driving a car. There's risk, or I trust an airplane more than I trust a horse. You know what I mean? So but
yeah.
but
Well, I think the reassuring message, because we always say this with commercial airlines, is that, and it's always a surprise to people, if you had, not that I can imagine losing all the engines, but if you did, you'd glide, and people can't get their head around that.
yeah,
But it's the same principle for you as well.
yes,
That's very
absolutely.
reassuring.
Yeah. Now, I like to think about one of the greatest things that happened. I don't know if you remember the pilot Chesley Sullenberger, who
Oh
landed
yeah, yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, he did everything right, and he had everyone on that plane survived, and
Mm.
that was just to pilots, we were just tickled pink that he did what he did. He did what he was supposed to do, what he was trained to do. They tried to give him, saying he could have land, he had engine power, he could have made it back to the airport, and they tested, and he could not have. That guy retired with dignity.
And it's back to your point about good decision making, isn't it?
Mm. Yes.
That's a classic of, like considered, training and then good decision making, which is, so I guess when you had the bug, do you do you think you had a natural aptitude to be a pilot, or can you think could anybody be a pilot?
I actually thought that I wouldn't say I had a natural ability. I you know I was I remember when I learned to drive, I was kind of a klutz, and I thought, oh God, what if I'm as bad of a pilot as I was a driver? Like bumping into so But I think with maturity, and I really wanted to do it. You know, I was a rare kid, a teenager. I wasn't interested in driving. I was kind of like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then, but with aviation, I just wanted to do it. As soon as that bug set into me, I was reading, I was studying anything about it I could. Got my books, started taking ground school. Before I started flying, I started in with talking with people and just being at the airport and going on airplane rides, and it wasn't something was gonna go away.
You were probably hooked, weren't you? Crikey.
Oh, yes. People get whatever it is they get hooked on, whatever it could be. Anything from quilting to golf to bowling or whatever it might be. Yeah,
And this was it for you. Amazing. So
yeah,
I find it, I love your stories. And when I think, you've come onto the group voluntarily, you've obviously see a lot of nervous passengers come through and you've been helping them. You've got the bug yourself, you've taught yourself to fly. So do you think you're going to go any further, or is this you kind of settled where you are now?
well, it's funny. I am going to be 56, and I am a slave to a pension through the school districts. But I think about it, it would be kind of neat. I know they're in need of pilots, but if I were to change careers now, I said I would lose, I would lose my pension from my job. And then, I love it. And I don't know if I'd want it to become work, because when you love something so much, if I was younger though, I'd have to say I would do it. But now I got a son, and he's married, and there'll be grandchildren coming, and I'm gonna want to be around. So I just fly and I'm home that night, so
Yeah, that's
keep it
nice.
as fun. But again, as
What's
I
the
said,
best bit about it flying for you then when you're up there, whether you're
for me,
testing somebody else or
my favorite part is a lot of people think, well, it's you're in the air, and that's great. I love being up in the air. I love actually controlling the airplane. I love, like, here I can do this to this airplane. It's like, wow, you never thought I'd be doing this. You know, 22 years ago, I wouldn't think I would be doing this. So and then being able to go places, and you go up in the air and it's cooler. And then when you're flying and you see big traffic jam on the freeway and you're like, bye. You don't have to be in that. Like, we get the worst traffic here.
yeah. Well, I always think that when I'm on my motorbike, I see traffic and I think, oh, yeah, bye bye, go past
Yeah.
it. But you do even one better. You fly over it.
Yeah. So let me
Well,
ask
you're
you,
probably safer than me, actually. They want motorbikes are much more dangerous.
I'll be honest, when I see someone on a motorcycle and they go through, I'm always afraid. What if I don't see them?
Mm,
I'd hate to hit someone.
yeah.
But
Yeah, it's not the safest thing I do by,
it's like,
by a country
I know
mile.
you're careful probably, but you just never know what someone else will be doing.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I am careful, but yeah, you're right. When I've come off my bike, I wouldn't say it's from my fault of mine. It's from just somebody doing something crazy in front of me, suddenly pulling right in front of me, like, okay. There's nothing you can do about that. It's out of your control,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. But yeah,
It's insane.
so that's the best bit for you, is being in control and being able to do those things
Uh-oh.
with the aircraft.
Yes. Being in control, it feels neat to be able to do that. All the studying paid off and all the work, and being able to control something. Because like I said, people are afraid of a lack of control. Maybe having that control will help with the fears.
Yeah.
Now, you live in the big city? You in London,
Just
or?
outside London, yeah, that's right.
I've always wanted to visit. My husband is English and Welsh and Scottish and Irish. So I kind of need to go there.
Well,
And the
you've got your own transport, so you could a few
weather.
stops along the way, and you probably make it.
I'd have to be refueled in air.
Yes,
From
well,
get
I'm
across
sure it
the,
could be arranged too.
I just think it's great. Like, growing up, when I'm probably a bit older than you are.
Same age.
Growing up, you're really well. I grew up, listening to, like, Richie Blackmore. He's my favorite guitar player. Deep Purple. He does all those English guys. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah. Please come on over. Yeah, come on over. We'd love that. So
yeah.
I'm going to push you then for a kind of a wrap up kind of question.
Sure.
Um, People listening, scared flying, they might have to go on some sort of general aviation little flight, and they think, oh, and that might worry them, because sometimes you do your big airline and that worry them, but then you get to somewhere, and then you have a little island hop, and it could be
Yes.
an aircraft just like yours, with somebody like you. What what would you say to them to reassure them in terms of not to be scared?
If they, if they're afraid of, if they're fine with the big airplanes and not the small airplanes, I would tell them, it flies the same. It's just smaller and slower. And if it's just you up there in front and no one else, I would have them sit up there with me and I would have them follow me on the controls and say, this is what it is. And they can, the thing about little aircraft is you don't see the guys up front in a big aircraft.
No.
In a small airplane, you see what we're doing. And I would tell you what we're doing. You're climbing and, you ever been on, on a big airplane and the airplane's climbing and you reach your cruising altitude and captain pulls the power and the airplane goes, and you hear the engine slowing down. Somebody might think, oh my God, what's happening? But when I have people up there, they'll say, okay, I'm pulling the power. The airplane is slowing down. That is me. And I'll show them right there. The throttle is that you use your hand, you push it in and out. You pull it out and the airplane, the RPMs will reduce and they'll know that that's me doing it. And I talk them through it. So when they go on a big airplane, those same sounds or anything, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Some people might need a little more than just that. It depends on the phobia or what causes it. Like I don't think I'll ever not be afraid of earthquakes. So I'm wondering if there are some people that would probably need some more intense, some like what you're doing. You do like therapy, am I right?
Coaching. I do coaching with people. Yeah.
Coaching.
We have got a therapist who works with us, but yes, I do coaching, which is like because I believe that people are normal and not everyone needs really, really intensive. So it can just be that we've got ourselves into bad habits, and it can be, for example, it's different things for different people. But yeah, I generally believe people are very resourceful, normal, capable, and they just need a little bit of help.
I believe you're right.
And people are amazing. And, I've seen thousands of people that have beat their fears, and so I'm constantly amazed at the resourcefulness of humans.
Right.
And people who might be a mum who take their kids for a flying lesson and end up as a pilot. It just goes to show anything's possible,
Yeah, and the thing is, my son was 9, and what it was for was the Boy Scouts. And they say, because they have an aviation badge where you do, go up and fly and get some ground lessons. And so that's what they did. I wasn't in charge. So I almost thought, it seems like here's something funny. I know we're getting ready to close, but I almost was like, do I take him on that? Because my parents were like, we don't like little planes. We only like big planes. Those things are dangerous. Oh, I hate those things. I've heard that my whole life.
Yeah.
So I almost was thinking, maybe I should, maybe not, And then I took him and he was, like I said, he just was with his friends. And he was like, oh, okay. Went up, came back. And it didn't get him, but it got me.
Yeah. And what I love about that is you had no clue whatsoever that was going to happen.
No, I didn't. I had no idea. I woke up at August 17th, 2002, my late grandmother and her twins' birthday. I lost them already. It was their birthday, and I just remember, that's how I remember the date, and went to take him that day and came home like, oh my God. That's all I could think about. My brain was spinning. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Stacie, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. And I'll be on.
Thank you for joining the Love Fly group. I'm really chuffed to have you in there and your tips and stuff. And I know that the general aviation thing's been a question that people have had for a while. So you might get a few questions coming your way in the group, just to warn you. But thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
I'm grateful. And thank you, Paul. It was a pleasure.
No, thank you. Come to England.
Oh, I hope so. Got to win the lottery. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Love Fly podcast. I hope you're finding it helpful with your fear of flying. Now, if you do need some extra tailored help, you can go to our website, lovefly.co.uk, and click on the courses button. You'll find more help there, such as our 30-day program and our on-demand webinar. Thanks again. See you next time.